Hi there, it's Martin here with a video to help you understand things to consider when you're thinking about converting the loft of a property into some habitable space. So the first thing you always need to check when you are considering converting a loft is that actually you've got enough head height. And the easiest way to see if you've got enough head height is actually to go up into the loft yourself, stand up there and see how much space you've got between the top of your head and the existing roof. The more space you've got in the middle of the roof, the more chance you've got of converting that roof space out. If you haven't got enough space, let's say your head is touching the top, then the only way you can convert that roof is by taking it off and putting a whole new roof on the top of the house. Now that may have its own challenges, particularly if you're attached to the house next door, may have some planning challenges with that, although that's perhaps a little bit less likely now with the change of the planning that we've got. But you've certainly got a lot more cost attached to building a whole new roof than it's probably worth considering for the average loft conversion. So the first thing is to make sure that you've got plenty of height up there. And if we've got an apex of the roof, the more of that space that you can actually walk around in, the better. The second thing to consider is how much of the space downstairs is actually going to be usable when you transfer it up into the loft space. It's very easy to look at the first floor of a house and say, oh, well, I've got 3 bedrooms on the first floor, so I'll put 3 bedrooms up in the roof space. Now, something to consider here is, of course, the slope of the roof massively impacts how much of that roof space is actually usable. And if you are, say, converting this into a bedroom that is part of an HMO, then you'll know that the HMO officer only measures the floor to a point where the ceiling slopes, the roof slopes to 1.5 meters. That's kind of my kind of shoulder level. Anything below that isn't included and is partially unusable. Now you can use it as a space. You could put a set of drawers in that slope, but of course you can't go right down to the very bottom of that triangle that you've created. It's really surprising how much space you lose when you actually consider that and measure that properly. Something else to consider is that, of course, you're going to have to insulate the slope of the roof. So the thickness of the roof is going to be increased. So that 1.5 meters may well be, you need to measure kind of where that's 1.6 meters at the moment, because some of that depth is going to be removed. And of course, there's also the issue with having to beef up and strengthen the floor. That can very easily take a little bit off the floor as well. So make sure you're not overestimating the floor space you get up there. It's really surprising, in the average kind of terraced house, you can't get much more than a bedroom and a bathroom. Some of the old, bigger Victorian type houses, you can get 2 rooms, and of course the big ones, you'll get even more than that. You have to go quite big before you can get a whole flat into the roof space. So if that's your strategy, really measure your detail, measure your area accurately and be clear how much space you've got to work with. Now, typically, under planning, you are not allowed to put a dormer window on the front of a loft conversion. I know we did a lot of them back in history, back in the 70s and 80s particularly. It was a standard thing to do. But actually now, under permitted development, you're not allowed to put a dormer on the front. And if you try and put an application for a dormer on the front, the likelihood is that you will fail. What you can put on the front is a sloping roof window. You might well have heard it called a Velux window. Velux are actually a trade name. There's lots of other options out there, but these windows will bring light into the sloping side. In fact, you may well need a window that is large enough to get someone out of if there happens to be a fire. That's not necessarily for the tenant of your bedroom to be jumping out of, but it would be for the fire brigade to get their ladder up to get your tenant out in the event of a fire. So typically expect to put some kind of means of escape roof window on the front slope of the loft conversion. On the back slope, typically you can square that off and you can build what we would call a dormer on the back. So it goes off often right up to the ridge line, maybe a little bit below the ridge, goes off at an angle and then has a square off down to the bottom. And of course, that's the bit where you create loads of additional space. And typically, in most areas, you can actually do those dormers under permitted development. If, however, you're in a conservation area or you're in a listed building, then you will definitely need to submit planning application for that dormer extension. Just on the little bit about conservation area, just read the terms of your conservation area, because sometimes the conservation areas only cover smaller elements of the properties. It may only, for instance, cover the front elevation of this of the property. But remember, in most listed buildings, or all listed buildings, and most conservation areas, you will need to make a formal planning application to convert a loft. So there's some things to think about. You can do that research fairly quickly. Definitely get up into the roof space when you go visiting a property. It's only when you get up there can you actually understand the space that's available, and that you wouldn't believe the number of times I've gone up into a roof space thinking it's big enough to convert and found that I'm banging my head on the roof before doing any work to it. So in reality, that's not a feasible proposition. I'm just going to leave you with one other little tip to consider if you are thinking of converting a loft space. Absolutely fine to consider the loft space, but don't forget that you need to get a staircase in. Do have a look at where the staircase fits in from your existing, normally first floor. Is there some space in the existing landing, or do you need to take some space out of a bedroom? And remember that that staircase needs to get into the roof space where the ceiling height is going to be 2 meters, because building regulations says that we have to have 2 meters head height all the way up the staircase. So the likelihood is the staircase needs to come up underneath the ridge, or perhaps in the part of the dormer at the back of the house. So do consider all of that when you're down on the lower floor, because again, there's no point in creating another bedroom upstairs by taking out a bedroom downstairs, or massively compromising a bedroom downstairs to get a new staircase in. So as ever, post below if you've got any more questions, if you'd like to follow up any questions on what I've just spoken about. Don't forget to subscribe, because that way you'll be told when I've got a new video out, and I really look forward to catching up with you on that next video.